Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're venturing into a really fascinating, though maybe sometimes shadowy corner of the digital world. We're talking about the player-created spaces within Fortnite Creative and UEFN. You probably know Fortnite mainly for its battle royale, right?
Yeah.
But there's this whole other universe of user-generated games kind of bubbling beneath the surface. And like any emerging online landscape, it's attracting its share of, let's just say, unexpected innovation and, yeah, some outright trickery, too.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've explored, quite a range of sources to try and understand this space a bit better. We're looking at articles from places like Sportskeeda and Gisli, first-hand accounts shared by YouTube creators like How To Boss and Snixie.
Ah, yes, their videos were quite revealing.
Weren't they? And also a lively discussion over on Reddit, plus information directly from Epic Games' own developer resources and their Discord channels.
Okay, so our goal here is to really get to grips with the various scams and creative exploits that seem to be popping up in UEFN. We want to understand what they actually are, how they're affecting the community, both players and creators, what the creators themselves are saying about it all.
And, critically, what actions Epic Games is taking, or maybe not taking, to address these issues.
Right. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding a pretty complex situation within a massively popular game.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe to start, what kind of trouble are players actually stumbling into out there?
Well, the Sportskeeda article we looked at lays out several pretty common scams targeting players specifically. One that keeps popping up, maybe unsurprisingly, is the promise of free V-Bucks, the in-game currency.
Yeah, the classic lure.
Exactly. These often appear as like websites or links that instead of giving you free digital cash, just try to install malware on your device or steal your Epic Games account details. It really plays on that, universal desire for something for nothing.
Right, the digital equivalent of an offer that's just too good to be true and usually leads to a major headache. They also mention skin swappers. What's the deal with those?
Yeah, what's interesting here is how they really tap into a core part of the Fortnite experience, which is customization, right? Players love personalizing their characters with different outfits or skins, but obviously not everyone wants to spend real money collecting them all. So skin swappers are presented as software that unlocks all these cool cosmetic items for free.
Okay, sounds appealing, but there's gotta be a catch.
There definitely is. The catch, as the article points out, is that these free skins, they're usually only visible to the person actually using the software. And perhaps more concerningly, these programs often contain hidden malware, things like crypto miners.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which secretly use your computer's processing power to generate cryptocurrency for someone else, all without your knowledge or consent.
So you get the illusion of free stuff, but at a hidden cost to your device's performance and security. Nasty. What about these supported creator scams? How do those work?
This one actually takes advantage of Epic's legitimate Support a Creator program. You know, the one where players can support their favorite creators using a unique code when they buy stuff in-game?
Yeah, the creator gets a small cut.
Right. The scam happens when, well, less ethical individuals lure players into using their codes with false promises. They'll say you'll get free V-Bucks or gift cards if you use their code. It's just a deceptive way to exploit a system that was actually designed to support the community.
It's like twisting the goodwill of the program for personal gain through a false pretense.
Okay.
And then there are the straight-up hacks and cheats. You'd think people would be wary of those by now, wouldn't you?
Well, the temptation to gain an unfair advantage in a competitive game, it's a powerful motivator for some. These websites offer things like aimbots, automatic aiming, or wall hacks, letting you see opponents through walls. They promise an easy path to victory.
But it rarely works out that way, I imagine.
Not really. Just like those free V-Buck scams, these often deliver malware designed to steal your personal information. And even if they did work, Epic's anti-cheat system is pretty effective at detecting and banning accounts that use them. So it's a really high risk for potentially zero reward.
Account trading sounds inherently risky, too. What kind of scams are involved there?
It's basically an unregulated market where players buy and sell Fortnite accounts, often because they have rare skins or maybe high rankings that other players want. The problem is the complete lack of any official oversight or protection. So dishonest sellers can easily take the buyer's money.
And then what? Give them a rubbish account.
Exactly. They might provide an account that's nowhere near as valuable as promised, or maybe even a completely useless one, and the buyer is just left with no recourse at all.
And the follow-back giveaways. That seems almost tame in comparison.
Yeah, while it might seem less serious than, say, financial scams or malware, it's still a form of misrepresentation, right? Creators promise they'll follow back or give away items to people who engage with their content, like, follow, subscribe, but then they just never actually fulfill those promises. It's just a way to artificially inflate their follower counts and engagement metrics.
Okay. Finally, and this is really concerning, the Sportskeeda article mentions predators baiting minors. That's a whole different level of seriousness.
Absolutely. The sheer popularity of Fortnite among younger players, it unfortunately creates an opportunity for malicious individuals to pose as peers, try to build inappropriate relationships. This goes far beyond just scams for virtual currency. It raises really serious safety concerns for kids, and it highlights just how crucial it is for parents to be aware of who their children are interacting with online.
Yeah, it's a very stark reminder of the potential dangers lurking in these online spaces. Okay, let's shift our focus now. Let's turn our attention to the creators themselves. What kind of exploits and scams are they facing within the UEFN ecosystem? Justly and our other sources mentioned quite a few.
Right. This is where things get really interesting because the creative process itself is being targeted. A really significant issue is map theft. Some individuals have apparently figured out how to extract the actual UAFN map files. These are the files containing all the level design, the assets, the .umap files.
That they can just grab the whole thing.
Pretty much, they can take these files, import them into their own Unreal Engine or UEFN accounts, and essentially re-upload someone else's entire creation, passing it off as their own.
Wow, that must be incredibly demoralizing for someone who's poured hours, maybe weeks of work into building something unique. It's like a chef having their signature dish just stolen and put on someone else's menu.
Exactly that. And to make matters even worse, they might even use the original map's name and thumbnail to trick players into thinking it's the genuine article. So they're siphoning off the potential audience and maybe even trying to monetize the stolen work.
That's just outrageous. What other challenges are creators dealing with?
Well, these fake reward maps are a huge problem. These are UAFN islands specifically designed to deceive players. They trick them into liking or favoriting the map by promising rewards that just don't exist, things like free V-Bucks, battle passes, or loads of XP.
How do they even make that look convincing?
The Snixie video we watched actually breaks this down really well. They often use visual tricks. For example, they can manipulate the appearance of existing in-game objects using something called material instances. It's like applying a different skin to an object. And they layer PNG images, which are basically digital stickers, to make it look like there are, say, V-Buck vending machines spitting out free currency.
So it looks legit, like you're getting freebies, but it's all just smoke and mirrors.
Mm.
A visual trick.
Mm.
What's Epic's take on this kind of deception?
Epic has stated very clearly they consider this a serious violation of their rules. It can lead to the demonetization of the offending islands and even bans for the creators behind them. They've actually updated their guidelines specifically to prohibit tricking users into interacting with content through false promises of non-existent free items.
Okay, it's good that they're cracking down on that specific tactic. But I imagine creators can be targeted in other ways too, right? Like you
Yeah.
mentioned commission scams.
Yes, the Gisli article highlighted this. Within the UAFN creator community, it's pretty common for people to commission each other for various services. Creating catching thumbnails for their islands, maybe writing custom code using the verse scripting language, or producing engaging trailers to promote their creations.
Makes sense. Collaboration.
Right. But unfortunately, some individuals will take an upfront payment for these services and then just disappear, vanish without delivering the promised work.
Ugh, that's a real setback, especially maybe for smaller creators who might be on a tight budget and really relying on these collaborations. What about this reselling of free tutorial codes? That sounds particularly underhanded.
It really is. There's a huge amount of free tutorials and resources available online to help people learn UF and verse. It's quite a supportive community in that sense. But some unethical individuals will literally take code directly from these freely available resources and then try to sell it to others as if it's their own original work.
So they're profiting from generosity.
Exactly. It not only profits from the efforts of those who generously share their knowledge, but it also kind of undermines the whole collaborative spirit of the community.
Then there's the issue of false copyright claims. That sounds like it could be a really damaging tactic, especially for creators.
Oh, absolutely. This is a nasty one. Sometimes creators who make maps that are very similar to already popular ones, maybe deliberate copies, maybe just similar ideas, will file bogus DMCA takedown requests against the original legitimate maps.
Why would they do that?
Their goal is basically to get the competition temporarily removed from the Discover section, which is crucial for players finding new islands. Even a short period of removal can significantly disrupt a map's vital early momentum and divert players towards their own, often less polished copies.
Right, because even if the claim is eventually proven false, those initial days or weeks of visibility are just so important for traction.
Precisely. While Epic does have a DMCA compliant system, and they say it includes human review, we'll touch on that more later. Even a temporary removal can have lasting negative consequences for a creator's success. The Digiday article really highlighted the frustration many legitimate creators feel about this vulnerability. Though Epic has made one positive change recently, stating they won't recognize takedowns based solely on game genre, which should help prevent some of the more blatant copycat claims.
That's something, I guess. Finally, and this sounds particularly concerning from a security standpoint, there's the risk of embedding malicious content within UEFN projects themselves.
Yes, this is a serious one. UAFN is a powerful platform, right? It allows creators to import all sorts of assets, even entire project files from elsewhere. However, if these assets or projects come from untrusted sources, they could potentially contain malicious scripts.
What could those scripts do?
As outlined in Epic's own UAFN Project Security Best Practices Guide, these scripts could potentially execute code on your computer. That could compromise your project data or maybe even other sensitive information on your system. It's a significant risk for creators, especially those who collaborate a lot or use assets from unknown third-party sources.
So it's not just about protecting creative ideas. There are real, tangible security vulnerabilities involved, too. This paints a pretty concerning picture of the UAFN landscape, doesn't it? What's the overall impact of all this stuff on the Fortnite creative community as a whole?
Well, the impact is pretty widespread, unfortunately. Firstly, just the sheer number of these low-effort scam maps, they tend to flood the Discover section. That makes it much, much harder for genuinely creative and high-quality islands to actually gain visibility. It's like trying to find a hidden gem in a landfill.
Yeah, makes it really difficult for the good content to stand out in that crowd.
Exactly. And this naturally can be incredibly discouraging for legitimate creators. People who invest significant time, effort, often their own money into their projects. They see these scam maps sometimes gaining popularity through deceptive means, while their own hard work struggles to find an audience. As we saw mentioned in the Reddit discussions on the Unreal Engine forums, many creators feel that Discover is just becoming overwhelmed, making it a real challenge for players to find truly engaging and original content.
I can imagine it also starts to erode trust within the creator community itself.
Oh, absolutely. The prevalence of commission scams, that practice of reselling freely available resources, it definitely creates an atmosphere of distrust. Creators become more hesitant to collaborate with others they don't know well, which, can stifle innovation and the growth of the community as a whole. And of course, the players, especially younger ones, are constantly being exposed to these fake reward promises. That can lead to frustration, disappointment, and potentially even security risks if they fall victim to the more malicious scams we talked about.
Yeah, it sounds like the creators have some pretty strong feelings about all of this. What's the general sentiment coming through from those sources like Reddit, the Unreal Engine forums, and that Digiday article?
I'd say the overwhelming sentiment is one of frustration. A major, major concern is the perceived lack of transparency in Epic's moderation processes. Creators frequently report having their maps taken down or facing other moderation actions without getting clear or timely explanations.
Which makes it hard to fix anything.
Exactly. It makes it really difficult for them to understand the reasons why, and therefore rectify any actual issues or appeal if they think it's unfair. The Digiday article highlighted a specific instance where a map was flagged for suggestive content, apparently, but the creator only received a detailed explanation much, much later, after they'd already lost significant visibility.
That lack of clear, fast communication must be incredibly frustrating when, as you said, time is so critical right after launching a map.
It really is. As so many creators emphasize, that initial period after a map is published is absolutely crucial for gaining traction in Discover. Any delay caused by unclear moderation, or worse, a temporary removal due to a false claim, it can severely impact a map's long-term success. There's a really strong feeling that the current system just doesn't adequately protect legitimate creators during this vital early phase.
And these false copyright claims, the DMCA abuse, that seems to be a particularly sore point for many.
They really are. Creators feel that while Epic's DMCA system might be legally compliant on paper, it doesn't do enough in practice to shield them from the negative consequences of these baseless claims. Even if a map is eventually reinstated after a false claim, there's often no automatic way to recover its previous visibility and discover. That lost momentum can just be irreversible. So the general feeling is that scam apps are rampant, they're overshadowing genuine creations, and this is leading to pretty loud calls for more decisive action from Epic's stricter moderation, better tools for creators to defend their work.
So yeah, a lot of frustration and a
Right.
sense that maybe they're not getting the support they really need right now. Okay, now let's look at Epic Games' response. What are they doing, or at least what are they saying they're doing, to tackle these issues? We looked at the How To Boss transcript, their Fortnite anti-scam effort summary, and that Digiday piece again.
Right. So Epic has stated, as mentioned in that How To Boss interview, that every single island published in UEFN undergoes a human review process. That's their official line.
Every single one. That's a lot of islands.
It is. And while some creators in the community remain, let's say, skeptical given the sheer volume of content, that is their official position, they also say they employ automated systems using machine learning algorithms to help prioritize where their human moderators should focus their attention, particularly on newly uploaded assets. Their stated goal is apparently to review islands within about 3 hours, although they do acknowledge that this isn't always possible.
3 hours is ambitious.
Very. They also aim to learn from past moderation decisions to streamline the review process for updated islands. So the idea is if an asset has been previously approved multiple times, it's less likely to face intense scrutiny again unless, of course, their rules have changed in the meantime.
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable approach in theory, using tech to assist the human oversight. What about the misleading content, like those fake reward maps we discussed?
They do have rules in place specifically against misleading content, and yes, this definitely includes those fake promises of rewards for likes and favorites. They also say they are actively working on improving how they communicate moderation decisions back to creators.
How are they doing that?
Well, things like showing creators thumbnails that actually highlight the specific violations, expanding their sub-rules to provide more detailed guidance. They are even apparently experimenting with a comment system where moderators could provide specific feedback directly. Although they do recognize that scaling that effectively presents real challenges, mainly due to the need for consistent moderator training and ensuring clear, helpful written communication.
Yeah, that's a tricky balance, right? Providing useful feedback without creating an overwhelming support burden or maybe even new avenues for confusion.
Exactly. And they do emphasize that they want to avoid implementing just tons and tons of rules that might stifle creative freedom. Their philosophy, they say, is generally to trust creators and allow space for innovation. But they also acknowledge that this kind of open approach can be exploited by those with, let's say, less honorable intentions. So effective moderation becomes this constant balancing act.
What about creators who are repeat offenders? Are they facing any real significant consequences?
Yes, Epic says they've implemented what they call a repeat offender program with escalating penalties. Now, these don't always involve permanent bans from the platform itself, but they can include things like temporary blocks on publishing new islands and, crucially, blocks on earning revenue through the platform.
Ah, hitting the wallet.
Right. However, and this is a definite point of contention within the creator community, they often allow the islands of banned creators to remain live, although they are demonetized if players are still actively engaging with them.
Why do they do that?
Their reasoning is that they don't want to punish the players who might genuinely enjoy those islands. But as you can imagine, many creators feel that this still allows rule breakers' content to occupy valuable space in the Discover section, space that could go to legitimate creators.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see both sides of that argument. Wanting to serve the players while also trying to deter bad behavior from creators. It's complex. What about the copyright issues and those really frustrating false takedown claims?
Well, their copyright takedown system, they say, adheres strictly to DMCA guidelines, and they reiterate that human reviewers assess each potential takedown report. They've also taken some other steps, like removing the job board and shop from the official Fortnite Creative Discord because of some unethical practices that were apparently happening there. They've updated their UAM rules to place a greater emphasis on originality. They've strengthened guidelines around prohibited content, privacy, bullying, and they've tried to provide clearer outlines of the consequences for violations. They've even introduced a system for reporting promotional content that seems to be duplicative across the platform.
And are they looking at preventative measures too?
They are exploring potential features like allowing creators to schedule the release of their islands, maybe giving more control, and possibly even pre-moderating assets before they go live, although details there are a bit thin. They're also actively working on systems to automatically detect and prevent the upload of duplicate thumbnails, which is a common tactic for copycats, and developing a system to kind of flag potentially problematic assets to creators before they even hit publish.
Right, trying to catch things earlier. It sounds like they're investing a significant amount of effort into these issues, even if the creators on the ground feel there's still, quite a way to go. What about issues happening off platforms, like misleading promotions we might see on YouTube or TikTok?
Yeah, they mentioned they do have a dedicated team that monitors promotions happening outside of Fortnite itself. They've apparently issued a significant number of DMCA takedowns against misleading videos. The figure mentioned was around 20,000 this year alone.
Wow, 20,000.
Yeah. However, a key challenge they face is definitively linking these off-platform promotions back to specific creators within the UEFN ecosystem, especially if the person promoting the content isn't necessarily the same individual who created the map itself.
Right, that attribution link can be tricky. And looking ahead, just briefly, what's Epic's sort of vision for the future of UAFN? Are they considering things like, say, more mature content ratings, for instance?
The representative in that How To Boss interview did express an openness, at least in principle, to the possibility of more mature experiences in the future, which kind of aligns with their broader ambition for this interconnected metaverse that could potentially accommodate a wider range of age ratings. However, they also acknowledge that practically implementing this within the existing Fortnite framework presents numerous pretty complex considerations. It's not straightforward.
Fair enough. And finally, what's their current stance on content generated using, well, artificial intelligence, AI?
Their current position is that they view AI primarily as a tool available to creators. Their main focus, they say, remains on ensuring that all content adheres to their established content guidelines, regardless of how it was created. So the main concern is whether a thumbnail or an island violates the rules, not necessarily whether it was made by a human or an AI.
But they must see potential issues there.
Oh, they do. They acknowledge the potential for AI to, for example, easily infringe on existing intellectual property, or to generate misleading thumbnails, both of which are already against their existing rules anyway. And they also want to remind creators and players that formal reporting mechanisms are available through the creator portal directly within UEFN itself and on the Fortnite.com website.
Okay, so to kind of bring this deep dive to a close then, it seems really clear that the UAFN ecosystem, while absolutely brimming with incredible creative potential, is currently facing some pretty significant challenges. These challenges stem from various scams and exploits, and they're impacting both the players who are just trying to enjoy the games and the dedicated creators investing their time and passion into building these experiences.
Absolutely. And Epic Games is undoubtedly taking steps to address these problems. We've seen updates to their rules, their moderation processes, their reporting tools. However, as we've heard directly from the creator community itself, there's still a very strong sentiment that more needs to be done. That fundamental tension between fostering a free, open space for creativity on one hand and effectively policing against those who seek to exploit the system on the other, that remains a really critical challenge.
Yeah, things like the lack of transparency and moderation, the disruptive impact of those false copyright claims, and just the sheer volume of potentially harmful or misleading content. These are all ongoing concerns. They really need continued attention for the long-term health of the whole UAFN ecosystem.
Definitely.
This whole situation really makes you think, doesn't it? As these kinds of metaverse-like platforms continue to expand and become, more integral parts of our digital lives, how can we best navigate that really delicate balance? The balance between empowering creative freedom and ensuring the safety and well-being of everyone involved, both the creators and the users.
It's the million-dollar question, really.
It is, and it's a question that extends far beyond just Fortnite, right? It has implications for pretty much all online creative spaces moving forward. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.